Well, I am very excited today to have a dear friend, a traveling companion, as we have been probably the furthest either of us to have traveled, and we did it together. But this morning, Tearle is going to come and share her story. And what I love is when I ask this of everyone when they share their story, and if you've shared their story, you've had this question asked of you. If you could sum up your story in one or two words, what would that be? And Tearle gave me this: unwanted opportunities. And I think that is such a universal statement, while hers is very specific. The opportunity of ministry. I'm just so excited to have you here sharing something that I think we will all find a way to identify with. And so I want to remind you, just like I've reminded everyone who's been up here before you, these people love you and they want the best for you. So you don't need to be nervous. And she actually stands in front of way more people than this on a regular basis, so I'm sure she's not nervous. But I would, yeah, way tougher audiences, because they usually are against you, right? Yeah. So, but I want to pray for you and pray for your story, and then you can choose to sit and tell your story or stand. You can walk around. You can do whatever you want to do. So, Father, I thank you for this woman, this amazing friend, and I just ask that in this time that you will speak not only to her, but through her. Father, may we all be moved by the opportunities that we never see coming, but yet we know you have given us a ministry through them. So God, I just ask that you will give Tearle your presence, your calm, your direction, that in this time as she shares, that we will all be moved by the story that she's walking through. God, we give you praise and honor. In Christ's name, amen. Thank you.
Good morning. As Trey said, I am a teacher, so I want to give this disclaimer first. Because when Trey gave this assignment about writing our testimonies, he gave it to the share group before he gave it to the rest of the church. So I think that was last fall that he gave it to the share group. And I just want you to know that I wrote mine and turned in my assignment right away. I am not a slacker. I'm not a slacker. In fact, if you look at my paper, it says Testimony 2015. But it just took a little while for me to get up here to share, I guess. So anyway, I'm glad to be here. And when Trey gave us this assignment, he said, I want you to tell your testimony. And, I've got lots of different testimonies I can tell about God has worked in our lives and in my life and in my family's life. I have a miracle sitting right there that you guys prayed into our lives, sitting right there in the second row. And, I feel like everybody knows that story. There's nothing to share. And so he also said, well, tell about a time where you felt God called you to do something. And so that kind of got my my mind working a little bit. And so that's how I came up with this story. And so the story starts out in the fall of 2010 when our son Tyler came out and he told us he was gay. And to be honest, I could have probably done 3 different testimonies that started out with that exact same sentence. But this is the one I've chosen. When that happened, it really was no surprise to us. Probably it was no surprise to anybody who'd spent more than 5 minutes with Tyler. But still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't kind of throw our household into some chaos for a while, because for those of you who haven't had this happen, when your child comes out, it's a readjustment for sure, because it just readjusts what you thought you were looking to, what you thought was the future was going to hold, and even though we might have expected it, it still it was a readjustment, and so. I thought, well, gosh, I guess I'm never going to have a daughter-in-law. And so knowing how sometimes mothers and daughters-in-laws get along, I thought, well, maybe that's a blessing. At the time, I didn't know if he would be able to be legally married in all 50 states. I didn't know if I would ever get a grandchild, from him. And I guess I still don't know that. But anyway, so it just left a lot of questions, and it just left us in a place of uncertainty. We should always feel that way because we're always, we don't know what's going to happen, but we kind of think we do. So this made us realize we just didn't have the answers. But I had faith in God, and I knew that God had blessed our family just beyond measure for so many years, and I knew that He hadn't done that just to desert us now. So I had faith that God had a plan, that He was in our future, and so we just had to keep moving forward. So we went along, and in about a year and a half later, I happened to go to a women's conference with some people from this church. It was a Kathy Tricoli women's conference in Indianapolis, and one of the speakers really touched me. It's a woman named Carol Kent, and she speaks all over the place. I don't know if you've ever heard her speak or not, but she just has this really moving story about how, and she's written several books about it, but it's about her son, who was just a model son. I mean, he was a son anyone would have been proud to have, and it was their only child. And he had been in the Naval Academy. He was a naval officer. He married a woman who had two young daughters. And his life was just going great. And they loved those, Carol and her husband loved those granddaughters like they were their own family. And it just, things were going great. Well, the biological father of these girls had had some issues with child molest. And so Carol's son and his wife did not want him to have unsupervised visits with these young daughters. And so the courts did exactly that, though. They granted unsupervised visits. And so Carol Kent's son, who has everything in the world going for him, he just was desperate. He just was absolutely desperate. And he killed the guy, just killed him. And so it wasn't in self-defense, or anything like that. And so he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of ever having parole. And so, Carol's talking about how this was a readjustment for her. This had changed her life so profoundly because now she and her husband were spending Christmas in a maximum security prison, and they would be for as long as they lived or as long as their son lived. That was going to be their life. And so she was really trying to come to grips with that. They even they lived in Michigan, but he had been in Florida when he went to jail, when he committed the crime. And so they moved from Michigan to Florida so that they could still see him on a regular basis. And so she just talked about how much she had struggled and really continues to struggle because her life was just turning out so much differently than she had planned. And so, as often is the case, as always is the case, God has a plan. And soon her son became a leader in the prison. And he was leading Bible studies. He was leading people to Christ. He even taught Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University. And I love that, because I teach it too. And he just became a light in the dark prison. And so because of that, Carol and her husband began to recognize that maybe the prison was their mission field too. And they actually have started a foundation called Speak Up for Hope, and it ministers not just to prisoners, but to their wives and children as well. And so I was just weeping when I listened to her, and I thought, maybe Tearle, gays and their families are your mission field. Maybe they're your mission field. Maybe you can reach out to them. And so, when you have a son who majors in theater in college, you get a chance to meet some gay people. Some stereotypes really are true. So we met a lot of them and their families. And as a high school teacher, certainly I can come in contact with a number of gay students as well and their families sometimes. And so I thought, maybe that's something, maybe that's a mission field I should consider. And so maybe you're asking, well, gosh, have you launched a foundation like Carol Kent has? Something we don't know about? Well, no, I haven't done anything like that. But here's my starting point. It's love. because more than anything else, I want the gay people and their families that I come into contact with to feel my love and my acceptance. It doesn't take any funding or programs or initiative to do that, but I just want to give them my love and acceptance because it's something they often don't get from their own families, and they often don't get from their church families either, if they have one. And I just feel like it's so important for them to feel that love from a Christian because they know that I'm a Christian. And so the first confirmation I guess I got that this was something maybe I was led to do, Tyler has a friend that he's known since elementary school, and a precious guy, and he has come out of the closet and gone back in, and come out of the closet and gone back in several times. And the reason he's been out and in and out and in is because every time he tries to come out, he's not at all accepted by his family or his church family. And he's a person who was raised in church. His faith is very, very important to him. And one of his greatest struggles, probably his greatest struggle, is that his faith is such a big part of who he is, but he has trouble reconciling those two aspects of his life. And so when it seemed like he was finally out of the closet for good, he was over at our house, and I said, well, and he told me his mom was really struggling. And I said, well, I'll call her. I'll call your mom. And he was so pleased that I said I would. And she's somebody I've known. Again, Tyler's known this boy since elementary school, so I've known this person for a long time. But I wasn't sure really how she would welcome a call about our gay sons. So I called one day, and I said something like, hey, I think we have something in common with our sons. And she didn't say anything. There was this long silence on the phone, and I thought, oh no. But then she began to talk, and we talked for 3 hours that day. And I'm not claiming that I fixed their family in that way at all, but I'd like to think that I was a light to her. And I continue to pray for her and her family. And while I couldn't fix where she was in life, I think I was able to offer her an encouragement that many others can't, because I had been, I was a little further down the road than she was at that time. And so that was the first confirmation that maybe this was a thing I should be focusing on, and there have been many others since then. But I'd been a Christian for a long time when I heard Carol Kent speak. But it brought such a change to my heart, because what I realized was that we don't get to pick our mission. Sometimes our mission comes to us, just by where we are in life. And so Carol Kent probably would never have imagined her mission field was going to be prisoners and their families, and I certainly didn't think that my mission field would be gays and their families. But just like those prisoners, I believe that gays and their families need our help. They need to be treated as equal to, not lesser than, and they need to be welcomed into our lives and into our churches, and they need to be supported by our churches. They need to be loved by our churches. And so when Trey talked last week, I felt like what he was speaking about really was a good transition into what I was going to speak about. And it gave me this thought. God gave me this thought because I think a lot of us love people. I mean, I think we love a lot of people that we don't necessarily like, and we are called to do that. But I also think sometimes we love people in spite of who they are. I love them in spite of the fact that they're gay or a different race or a different religion. I love them in spite of that. But I guess my challenge would be to you is to love them not in spite of who they are, but because of who they are.
And I hope you can appreciate how difficult that is for anyone to stand up and share something that is so personal. I know in this congregation, many of you know who Tyler is. Tyler was in my youth group for I don't know, from the time that I started here until he graduated. And Tyler's a very close friend. And I reached out to him this week and just asked if there was anything that he would be okay with me sharing about mine and his conversations. And I will share this portion of that. When Tyler came out of the closet, I asked Tearle and Eric, I said, hey, can I call him? They're like, well, we kind of hope you would. And so I called him and we went to lunch and I told him, and I want you to know this because I've had this conversation. I'm not sure why God used a very pig-headed southern boy in me to a part of this very same mission field. I was in youth ministry for 9 years and had a total of probably 100 kids come through my youth group. And at Current, I know of 8 to 10 of them who are practicing homosexuals. And I love them all. And here's the thing. God loves them. Just like we've said from the very beginning of this, God created you to love you, and he loves you just because he created you. And I sat with Tyler, as I have with every one of my students who came out of the closet, and I took them to lunch if possible. If not, I tried to get a one-on-one meeting, and I explained to them this. God loves you as much today as he did the day before you came out of the closet. And I love you just as much today as I did before I knew. And as long as I sit in this pulpit, if you walk into this congregation and someone asks you to leave or makes you feel uncomfortable, you better let me know because I'm going to kick their butt. I want you to know how strongly I feel about that because I believe that the Christian response is something. Tearle's email on Monday of last week really challenged me in this process of not to love someone in spite of who they are, but to love them because of who they are. Because they are still his. And they are still ours. And when I asked Tyler for permission to talk about our conversation, he said, Trey, he said, whatever you want to say, I'm an open book for you. He made a funny comment about being the poster child for gay people in our church. But because it's Tyler and he loves to poke fun. But in that, I told him, I said, here's the thing. I believe that bigotry and prejudice tends to start going away when we get to know someone. And what we need to do is learn to love someone and get to know them before we ever make any judgments about who they are. And so the story that Tearle really brought to my mind whenever I started thinking about this comes out of the book of Luke. And we're going to read through the story real quick, and then I'm going to back up and I want to address some parts of it. Many of you know this story, the parable of the Good Samaritan. It says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied, and how do you read it? The man answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus replies, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said this, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wound, pouring out oil and wine. Then he put the man on his donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Now, I want to just kind of pick through this story and just kind of open up some truths to the story and what's there. So it starts off with, on occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. So I think that's important. Jesus has developed this reputation as his ministry. He has, throughout his ministry, he has challenged the religious authority, and he has reached out to the common man. And in doing so, he has healed blind men and women. He has healed people that have been sitting next to pools for years trying to get healed. He has gone up to women who have been caught in adultery, and he has given them the opportunity to walk away life changed forever. This is who Jesus is. And so because of that, because he continues to challenge the religious people of the day, he is questioned, he is grilled, and he is brought to this place where an expert in the law has been brought in to challenge him on what he believes. So what is written in the law? And he replied, how do you read it? And the man answers, the religious lawyer says, the greatest command, what is written in the law and how I read it is, you're supposed to love God and love your neighbor. This statement is a combination of two different scriptures in Deuteronomy, and they are called the Shema. Every Jewish religious person would have known this as the essence of God's law. Now Jesus, later on, he adds on to this, and he says, he quotes, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he adds a tag at the end of it. And upon these words, all of the law and all of the prophets rest. Now Jesus is the only person who ever adds that, but what he says is, I don't mean for you to take this just as a good guideline as to how to be a Christian, how to be a God follower. What I want you to understand is, if you get these right, then you can understand everything else that is written in scriptures. Because there's stuff that doesn't make sense sometimes. There's stuff that is difficult sometimes. But within this, if you will understand the priority of love God and love your neighbor, you can better understand everything that was written about God. And that's what Jesus walks to tell us. And so he's being questioned. And so the question with this, what must I do to inherit eternal life? I want to open up that question just a little bit more. Going back to a couple of weeks ago when Ricky and Kyla spoke, we talked about adoption. So the question he's asking is, what must I do to be adopted by God? To be claimed as his, because adoption, remember, is not in opposition to blood relation. In ancient Jewish times, every child had to be adopted. Otherwise, they were left on the streets to die. So if a husband and wife have a kid, there's a birth defect, the husband can reject the adoption of that child, in which the doctor's response should be to take that child out to the edge of a field and leave it there. Okay? So every child must be adopted. And so the question is, what must I do to be adopted by God? That's the inheritance part of that. So what we're asking, how do we become sons and daughters of God? That's the essence of the question. And so then we have Jesus. Jesus replies, what is written in the law? How do you read it? And then the guy gives his response, and Jesus says, well, you've answered correctly. You've given me the fact. Do this and you will live. To me, this is almost a flippant response from Jesus. It's not like you have answered perfectly. It's actually more of a, yeah, that works. And so it's not just about how we treat people, because I think that's what Jesus is getting to the core of here. It's not just about how we treat, it's about how we care for people. Because I can treat people really, really nicely and be a horrible individual. I think we've all seen examples of people that live that out. Great humanitarians, but no heart. So Jesus is getting to the core of the individual. So who is my neighbor? In the reply, Jesus said, a man was going down to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to Jericho, when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, just a quick address, because I want you to understand that this is a statement about all of humankind. The word that is used for man, a man, is the word anthropos. Now, that's where we get anthropology. Thank you. I can never get the word right. It's where we get the word anthropology. See, I told you. Which is the study not of a man, but a study of humankind. So what this is saying is this is actually a much bigger statement about how we treat people. Now, there's an interesting thing. What do we know about this individual? What do we know about this individual?
We had money.
No, not the guy that stopped, not the Samaritan, the guy that's been robbed. He had something. He had something that was taken away from him. But do we know his nationality? Do we know his sexual preference? Do we know it was indeed a man? Or is that just because in the NIV it says man? Anthropos is humankind. It could be anyone. And here's something that's very interesting. So they stripped him of his clothes. Now, this happens in the Middle East. All right? In the Middle East, you can be of any nation, and your skin color is different. If you are from the southern part of the Middle East, you're going to be more black, more African. If you're from the northern part, you're going to be a little bit more tan-colored, more Middle Eastern, what we think of, especially when you think of the Jewish. Typically, you think of the big nose, that Greek nose that stands out. But what typically divides so that people can recognize from what country someone's from is actually how they dress, because you can be Jewish and you could be black or brown. You could have the big nose or not have the big nose. We have those stereotypes today. At that point in time, a Jewish person was a person who was born in Jerusalem or in the countryside there. And you could be of any ethnicity and still be Jewish. So the only way to know the difference between a Jewish and a Samaritan and someone from other parts of Persia or from Rome even is to see how they're dressed. So all of a sudden the clothes are gone. They're beaten, so now not only are they naked, but they're also bloody. So we don't have any way of knowing anything about this person other than something was taken from them. So it could have been anyone. Anyone we know. And there's no distinguishing marks. There's no factor to tell us anything about that person. And I think it's intentional in Jesus' story that we see that person from that standpoint. Because we can't know if they were Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever. We can't know if they were gay or straight. We can't know if they were good person or bad person. We can't know anything about them except for they were beaten and left for dead. So let's look at the other three people in the story. All right, a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. What? Okay, who is a priest or rabbi? Hebrews 5:1 says, "For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relationship to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins." So a rabbi or a priest, as described in this, is just a pastor. That's what they are. They're someone who has been appointed by the people to speak on behalf of the people to God. So he takes offerings, he takes sacrifices, and he is the person who would be a religious big shot. You know, this could be the Billy Graham of the day kind of a deal. We don't know. But big shot, but remember who he's talking to. He's talking to a professional religious lawyer. So, do you think there might be a point that he's making by bringing a priest into this? All right. Why would he pass by? Numbers, the book of Numbers, chapter 19, verse 11. Whoever touches a human corpse will be unclean for 7 days. We can assume that within the next 7 days, there is going to be a religious day. And if the priest gets over there next to this person and they happen to have died already, or they die while in the care of the priest, he can't perform his priestly duties on the next Sabbath. So what does he do? He walks by. He is strictly adhering to his religious law. But in the process, he is very much leaving the cares of a person to the side. So the next person. So to a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. Who is a Levite? In Deuteronomy, we learn that Levitical priests are all of the tribe of Levi. They shall have no portion of inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's food offerings as their inheritance. They shall have no inheritance among their brothers. The Lord is their inheritance as he promised them. God has chosen him out of all your tribes to stand and minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons for all time. So the difference between a Levite and a priest or a rabbi is a Levite automatically by birth, they are from the tribe of Levi, and therefore they're already religious people. All right? They are determined ahead of time. Their entire life is going to be driven towards a pastor's life. So this is someone who's a pastor by birth. A priest, a rabbi, is someone who is a pastor by choice. So why can't he touch him? Why doesn't he go help? The very same reason. Let's go back. The whole Numbers 19:11. He's a priest. If he touches him and he dies, he no longer can perform his priestly duties. So here's the last one. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds and poured on olive oil. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii. 2 denarii is equal to 2 days' worth of earnings. And gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expenses you may have. All right, so this Samaritan, who is a Samaritan? Hosea 13:16 puts it this way: the people of Samaria must bear their guilt because they have rebelled against God. During the division of the tribes, the country of Samaria did not want to observe the Israelites' understanding of how God was to be worshipped. They still worshipped Yahweh, the Creator God. But they worshipped him differently. In fact, you learn later in a conversation with Jesus that they worshipped on different mountains. In Israel, in the whole southern part of Judaism, they worshipped at Mount Sinai, where the law, the books of the law was given, where Moses had the big campfire. He met with the Holy Spirit on the mountaintop. It says that he saw where God had been, and his face shone for like a long time, and he had to wear a veil. Do you guys remember that kind of a story? That's where the Israelites say we should go and worship. The Samaritans said, well, we have a mountain here in the north. There's no need for us to make that journey because God spoke to our people here on Mount Horeb. And so that's where they would go to worship. And so that was a huge divide. We may not think that's very big, but it's about as big as do we sit in pews or chairs? Do we have carpet or hard floor? Do we sing in modern songs or old hymns? What do we do? It's the same type of argument that the church argues today. But that's the divide. So what you have is, sorry, I grew up in the South, in Louisiana, and so there were 2 major religions. There were Catholics and there were Southern Baptists. And if you weren't either one of those, no one knew who you were. And so that would be like asking the Catholics and the Baptists to worship together. All right, it just doesn't happen. They're both very strict in their ways. They're both fairly certain that their way is the only way that's going to get you to heaven. And so the opportunity for them to come in together and do something is very difficult, but that's who they are. So why would this guy stop and help? Because he put righteousness over being right. The religious leaders, with all of their goodness, with all of their greatness, with all of their desire to follow God, whether it was by birth or by calling, they wanted to follow the right way over following God's righteous way. And so what they did was they put their religion ahead of people. And I guess what I feel that God is calling me to point out today is just like last week. I think it's very interesting that we decided to choose to tackle two pretty big things in 2 weeks. We talked about politics last week, which I never do, and we talk about loving what the church deems unlovable so often. And in both of those, I come back to community has to come before being right. We have a broken world today because people put their opinions ahead of knowing God. This week when I was looking for some ideas for what to share today and different things, I came across a song that I thought was really interesting, and it's called "The Scandal of Grace." Feel free to YouTube it, to check it out, whatever. But "The Scandal of Grace," and it has this one sentence in there that says, "I would give everything to know him." And so it led me to this question: are you willing to give up everything to know God? Because in the understanding of biblical knowing is not just a head knowledge. It is a heart understanding. Would you give up everything to know God? What is it that you're holding on to that keeps you from knowing him deeper? Maybe it's your prejudices. Maybe there's something in you that when you see someone that's dressed a certain way or speaks a certain way, that you instantly judge who they are and what they're about. Maybe you need to give up your certainties. Well, this is exactly how I know Jesus would have done this. Well, I question that always with myself. This is exactly how the Bible says we should do it. Well, yes, I'm sure that there is something that you can quote that says that's exactly how we should handle it. But I would question, does Jesus' lifestyle match that or challenge that? Maybe we need to give up our worldly wisdom. You know, this story of the Good Samaritan, when I was in seminary, my professor called this not the story of the Good Samaritan, the story of the gullible Samaritan. He didn't know anything about this dude that he picks up on the side of the road. And yet, he gives up expensive oils to heal his wound. He gives up 2 days' wages and the loss of whatever time for wherever he was going and whatever he was doing. He gives up all of that and tells the innkeeper, if the guy runs up a bigger bill than this, ordering porn on the pay-per-view, or he's a glutton and he orders room service for the next 16 days, just let me know and I'll cover it. I mean, that's gullible. And often we in the church say, well, God doesn't want people to walk all over you. Guess what? He kind of does. Jesus let people beat him and put a crown of thorns on his head so that other people like you and me could have our sins forgiven. What are you willing to give up so that other people's sins might be forgiven? So I guess in reality, I'm asking you to be a doormat for someone else so that they can wipe their cruddy, crusted feet off and come clean before Christ. Maybe you need to give up your ignorance. Maybe God's asking you to dive deeper into Scripture. Maybe he's asking you to dive deeper into relationships. Maybe he's asking you to give up some of your money, some of your time, or maybe some of your other commitments to spend more with him. What are you willing to trade to know God better? Guys, I know this ain't a happy sermon. There ain't nothing happy about giving up who you are for someone else. But when you practice it, life is better. Oh my gosh, life is so much better. I am no longer judged by who I have been, but by whose I am. So what's some action steps? 4 steps. I try to keep it short and simple for you. Number 1, love the people God put in your path. The Samaritan did just that. Whoever it is, whatever the situation is, love them. I love what you said a while ago, Tearle. We have a lot of people in our lives that we may not like a whole lot, but we love them. I understand that there are difficulties in a relationship, but when you put love first, you got to know the relationship can get dirtier. You're going to have to walk with people through some pretty dark holes if they trust you and love you enough to share. And that's okay. In fact, that's what we're called to. I put this in because of Tearle, because of how she said it, and because of the way it's working in me. We don't love people in spite of who they are, but because of who and whose they are. I don't love Tyler in spite of who he is. I love Tyler because I love Tyler. He is an awesome kid. Who else at 26 years old has written and published 2 plays? You know, some dude from Markleville, Middletown. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to throw you into that. But there's a kid from Middletown who went to a small school in Shenandoah that should have never had an opportunity to be successful in the theater world, and yet Tyler is doing it. And he is an awesome kid. And if you've ever spent more than 10 minutes around him, one of the things you know is that is a kid who knows how to love. And I appreciate that so much. And I don't love him in spite of who he is. I love him because of who he is. Don't focus on your differences. Whether you're Catholic or Southern Baptist, whether you're Pentecostal or Presbyterian, whether you're black or white or male or female, what do we have in common? We were created by God to love. And he loves us just because he created us. Let's start there. Hold out hope for the people you love. Hold out all hope. You know what? I know that there's an awful lot of people that have been hurt by the church over the years because the church has felt the need to be right rather than be a community. I grew up in that community. I grew up in a church where there was no one in my church that ever had a problem, because if they had a problem, they disappeared. We never saw them again. I grew up in a church that if somebody went to the altar, everybody sitting in the chairs behind them was going, "What are they up there for? What'd they do this week?" And I'm not kidding. I wish I were kidding. When church was over, I can't tell you how many times I got back to the entryway of the church and I heard somebody going, "Yeah, you know why they were praying, right?" These altars, they're a place for you to have intimate connection with God. They're not a place to be judged when somebody goes to them. Guys, we have sat on our righteous high chair for long enough, throwing our temper tantrums like toddlers when people don't look the way we do or act the way we do or believe the things we do. That's got to end, or there is an entire segment of our world that will never hear about the grace and love of Jesus Christ. Because the only thing they see with Jesus Christ is hatred and bigotry and judgment. That's winning. That encourages people to try God for the first time, doesn't it? No, we push people further and further from God when our calling is to hold out a hand and invite them into the conversation. I'm not asking you to agree with everything that someone does. Believe me, I don't agree with half of the stuff you guys do. Sorry, that was supposed to be funny. I didn't mean that way. But we don't have to agree on every little detail. But we love each other. And love washes over a multitude of sins. And so I guess I need to wrap this up, because I'm making up for my 5-minute sermon last night. Thank you, Buck. Guys, I'm going to ask Ryan and Suzanne if they'll come back up and just kind of lead us in a closing song. And If this morning there is something on your heart and you want to come and you want to pray about that, I want to give you that opportunity. If you want to talk with God and you want someone to come alongside you and pray with you, over here, these altars, these chairs, you can have a seat, you can kneel. Someone will join you and they'll pray with you. If this morning you're going through something and you think, I just want to spend some alone time with God, we're not going to sit back there and judge the people that are up here. If you want that time, that space, over here, these altars, these chairs over this side, come and sit or kneel and pray. Talk to God a little bit. I hope that this morning that no one feels like they got their toes stepped on because they're already walking into this place of realizing where God is calling them. But if this morning your toes got stepped on a little bit, I'm not sorry. I can't apologize for that because I firmly believe this is who God is calling us to be. I've had the opportunity over the last several weeks to talk to people as they left this place for the first time. And one of the things they've said is, wow, this church feels like a big family that's not closed off to visitors but invites visitors into it. Guys, that's a huge statement about who you are, about our values as a church. But if there's any segment in which we are holding at an arm's length, I want to make sure that we resolve that and dissolve that now. And so if you need prayer, if you think, Trey, I just want to come up there and ask for forgiveness, I'll stand right here in the middle, and anyone who wants to confess their sins, I will hear them. And God will hear them and wash them away. And so we'll do that while Ryan and Suzanne are playing and singing. Let me say a quick prayer, and then I'll stand right here in the well. And anyone who wants to come and do that, you can do that. You don't have to confess your sins to me. You can do that one-on-one with him where you're sitting at one of these altars. But if you feel that you need to say it out loud, then I will hear you. Father, we are thankful for all of our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and grandchildren that are spread around this world. Those who we agree with and those who we don't. God, give us strength, give us wisdom, give us guidance as to how we can love people and show them your love. Father, help us to not make people our projects, but to make people our friends. Help us to not love people in spite of who they are, but love them because of who they are. Father, help us to see you and to help others to see you. We ask that you will hear our prayers in this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
The more I seek you, the more I find you, the more I find you. The more I find you, the more I love you. The more I love you. I want to sit, but I want to sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hands, lay back against you and breathe, feel your heartbeat. This love is so deep, it's more than I can stand. I melt in your peace, it's overwhelming. Guys, I'm singing this song because of the challenge of asking myself, what do I need to surrender or give up to know God more? And I thought, man, I want to know God more. I want to know more of who He is, who He really is. Not just in my head, but in my heart. And this song came right to my mind. The more I seek you, the more I find you. And the more that I find you, the more that I love you. So that's my challenge, is to say to yourself, man, I want to seek Him. I want to know Him. The more that I find Him, I'm going to love Him so much more. That's what happens. The more I seek you, the more I find you. The more I find you, the more I find you, the more I love you. The more I find
God, we thank you for your Spirit that walks with us. Father, there are some hard things that we've spoken of in the last couple of weeks, and I just ask for your presence as we work through them. Father, I pray for your guidance as we walk with you. May we feel you so close that we begin to feel your heartbeat in ours, that we begin to see the world through your eyes, see how much you love people, see how much it breaks your heart when other people are broken. And may we approach ministry from that same place, in that same time. God, as we go this week, help us to love everyone in our path. Not in spite of who they are, but because of who they are. And may we be able to continuously hold out that hope and love to them. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. You are dismissed.